Former Congressman Ron Paul joins us, and it's very exciting to see he's got a new bestseller out. We'll talk about that. He's launched his own radio TV network and is fighting the info war. And boy, we couldn't think of a better time to have him with his economic knowledge and all of his financial predictions, unfortunately, coming true like prophecy, with the debt limit, with the Chinese communists lecturing us and the IMF lecturing us like we're some third world country being conquered by financial interests, with the so-called government shutdown, arresting people that show up at the national parks, letting illegals have a demonstration on the mall, but closing it to everyone else. Former Congressman Ron Paul, thank you for joining us, sir.
Good to be with you today, Alex.
There's so much happening. I mean, what do we tackle first?
Well, why don't we solve all the problems of Washington? Let the bus come. It's coming soon. They're not going to work their way out of it, so it's going to collapse. Let's just keep working on the fact that when we get around to rebuilding this whole entire system, that we do it the way it was intended originally and actually improve upon it. I think the concept of liberty has advanced even since the time of the founders, but we've regressed so desperately far from what they intended. I think we should anticipate that, in the future, in the next several years, you're going to see a big collapse of this. And then we have to talk about what kind of a monetary policy, why we need to bring our troops home, why we have to quit expanding the deficit every day, and you raising these debt limits and planning on total socialized medicine. That all has to end, and it's going to end because it's going to fail. I think we should anticipate that and look at it as an opportunity, and that's our job to make sure that people know what is best for us. And I'm always arguing the case that less government, more freedom is what we need.
Dr. Ron Paul's our guest. Sir, many top analysts have said that the American empire is in its beginning stages of death. And now a lot of columnists and others are saying, look, this looks like the beginning of the end of this kleptocratic mega government. What is your take on when the big event is coming, or will it be a group of events?
Well, it's hard to protect the timing, but I think I agree with the assessment that it will end. And I look at it like a building standing but no foundation. Yeah, it's sort of sitting there and wobbling, but it hasn't crashed. And I think it will because, the financial system is so unstable. It's totally based on debt and confidence in a dollar and confidence in the Fed that they'll always print the right amount of money and they'll always keep the interest rates right and they'll always bail out everybody that needs bailed out, which I think is a total hoax. So the big event could occur next week. It could occur in 5 years from now. And I just think it's too difficult to predict. But so far, there has been a steady erosion in that direction. That is, there's less confidence now. The Fed has to buy more foreign debt and more mortgage debt because their foreigners are buying a lot less. But the trust is still there. They're still anticipating the Fed is credible and the dollar is still credible. But eventually that will be lost, and exactly when that's going to happen, I don't know. But I would think in the next several years you're going to see some very major changes and a real challenge to all of us on what's going to replace it.
Dr. Paul, Gallup and other polls show the lowest approval rating ever for government in general, the lowest level of trust. I think that's a positive thing. That tells me people are finally starting to realize how much trouble we're in.
Absolutely. If somebody's trying to recover from alcoholism or drugs, they say it can't be done unless they acknowledge, that there's a problem and things are very negative before you start doing the right things. And I think a 5%, trust factor for the government is really a good sign, because that means that now they'll quit believing the government. I mean, they don't trust the government. They don't believe the government. The government always lies to us, and whether it's foreign policy or domestic policy. And then we have Clapper and these other guys get on these committees and lie to us about what they're doing and how they're spying on us. So the people have a right to challenge this. And I think the internet helps. I think radio shows like yours helps. I think everything that we do and say helps, and it's so much different than it was before we had these vehicles. And of course, the system was always assumed to be much healthier than it is today. But just think how quickly the Soviet system disappeared. I think that was the greatest miracle or event, at least in the 20th century, that nobody was, the day before, the month before, the year before, said, oh, next year the Soviet system would be gone. Everybody would have considered that person nuts. But it was fragile, and it fell apart. It went quickly, and thank goodness we didn't have to have a nuclear war in order to get rid of the Soviet system. So I think we're probably 1987 right now, where the Soviets were at 87, and within 2 years it was gone.
Sir, I 100% agree with what you just stated. In fact, I've made the point that I believe we're 1987. If you were comparing it to East Germany, 1989, we're about 1989. If you compare it to 1991, I hope that Homeland Security just stands down if some type of collapse happens and doesn't try to go around squeezing the public. But they appear to be organizing to do just that. But here's the good news. I like your take on this. We saw the world stand up, including Congress and others, led by your son, saying no to backing al-Qaeda, no to expanding the war in Syria. We've seen Obama's total push to get our guns, failed for now. Basically, everything they've tried has failed. They got Obamacare, but now they can't even implement that. Maybe Mitch McConnell's right. Maybe let them try to implement it instead of them blaming libertarians and conservatives for the mess that's happening.
No, I think we're at the point, just let it go. Not that I criticize those who have been fighting it. I was fighting it all the chances I've ever had. But I think let it go. Maybe the people are so angry now, again, loss of trust, they can't even sign up. It's such a mess. But you know what? You mentioned the change in attitude about NSA as well as Syria. I think that is just great stuff. But even in another issue, sometimes more controversial for some people, and that is the government has just about conceded with the states' rights to legalize the use of marijuana. And that is a freedom issue, and it's a states' right issue.
It is.
And it's something even liberals, sort of like.
It's a bellwether.
Because the liberals are defending states' rights. But, they're starting to talk about state laws changing monetary policy and standing up for their rights. So I think nullification is here today. It's as healthy as it's been in, the last 200 years, really. It was only tested early on, and but I think it represents nullification. They're just backing off because when the people overwhelm, the politicians will respond. And I know it's very frustrating with a lot of people. They say, no, they never listen. But that's because there aren't enough people. When the numbers are there and you pointed it out, they had to respond and rein in Obama when it came to Syria. And hopefully the softening stand against Iran is also a reflection of the people's attitude. 75% of the people don't want us to go to war against Iran. I don't even understand why you have 5% of the people want to start a war with the Iranians. That is so stupid. And yet there's still some out there, and the neocons are crying up a blue because of all that, and that he's backed down a little bit. But it's the American people that count. That's why I think attitudes are so important.
Sure, and former Congressman Ron Paul joins us. I want to get into homeschooling and your new book that really is at the heart of the solution here before you got to go in about 5 minutes. But first off, looking at the government shutdown itself and nullification overall, California just nullified the NDAA secret arrest attack on habeas corpus. So, again, it does show even the grassroots left can begin to understand the tyranny and recognize states' rights and nullification are there for a reason. But looking at the government shutdown, you've only got 17% of the government that's actually shut down, and that's stuff that the people actually use, like national parks and other areas. They're giving tickets to people that jog on the sidewalk by national parks. They're closing areas of Arlington Cemetery, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the Iwo Jima thing. I mean, the instinct of authoritarians to try to dominate everyone when it's backfiring, it does give credence to your point that they're really a bunch of buffoons.
Yeah, and this whole thing, about the shutdown, is a farce. It's political gamesmanship. And it's amazing that the president doesn't get much more negative press out of this, but, you know, his buddies in the media keep trying to prop him up. But there is no real shutdown. You know, they're always passing a law or Obama makes a ruling. Yesterday it was the issue of taking care of the individuals that have died in the war and given them their benefits. You know that they can do anything they want. If they can bail out nations and banks, everything else to the tune of trillions of dollars, they're not going to allow a default, and they could do anything that they desire here. The only thing they close down are those visible things that have a political implication, and hopefully the American people will be cynical enough and realize that it's a joke, it's a real joke and a farce on what they're doing. And I think this is good that the people, you know, are waking up and realizing, you know, it's a bunch of politicians trying to outdo each other.